Welcome, everyone. Ready to explore Cuneiform with us? We're going to unravel how this incredible writing system, the world's earliest we know of, came to be.
It's a fascinating story, and we're talking about more than just, some old writing on clay tablets.
Right. This is laws, maps, medicine, even religion,
Yeah.
all inscribed with those distinctive wedge-shaped marks.
Exactly. And our journey starts with an excerpt from, well, you could say a pretty well-known online encyclopedia under cuneiform.
Perfect. So let's jump in. Cuneiform. Where do we even begin?
You might be surprised to learn it all started with something quite practical. Accounting.
Okay, accounting. We're talking ancient Mesopotamia here. How does that even work?
Well, picture this. Thousands of years ago, going as far back as the ninth millennium BC, people were already using these little clay tokens to represent, quantities of goods.
So each token was like, okay, this is one sheep or this is a jar of oil, something like that.
Precisely. Each token stood for a specific amount of sheep, jars of oil, whatever they were trading.
So kind of like a really, really early IOU system.
You got it. And to make sure nobody was messing with these tokens, they'd seal them up inside clay envelopes called bullae.
Clever. Keeps everything safe and sound.
But here's the thing. They then started pressing those tokens onto the outside of the bullae to show what was inside.
Whoa, so they could see at a glance what was in each envelope.
Exactly. It was a way of safeguarding those transactions, but what they didn't realize was they were also, kind of accidentally, creating a visual record.
That's amazing. So these simple clay tokens, they were the very first step towards writing.
That's the remarkable part. Over time, those impressions on the bullae, they became more than just, representations of quantities.
These started to actually symbolize the objects themselves.
Exactly. Those early 3D tokens, they gradually morphed into 2D impressions, capturing, the essence of the goods they stood for. That's the birth of writing right there.
Incredible. And wasn't there a tablet discovered in Kish that's considered one of the very first examples of this?
Ah, yes, the Kish tablet. It dates back to around 3500 BC, one of the earliest examples of these symbols actually taking shape.
So from simple tokens to actual symbols, what happened next?
Well, those initial symbols, we call them pictographs. They were basically pictures representing whole words. But as time went on, they got more abstract.
More abstract, so like less detailed pictures. How did that work?
It's like this. Take the symbol for arrow. At first, it looked just like an arrow, the weapon.
Makes sense.
But in Sumerian, the word for arrow sounded a lot like the word for life, so the same symbol could be used for both.
Wait, so one symbol for two completely different words? That must have caused a lot of confusion.
Oh, you can imagine. To get around this, the Sumerians, they came up with something pretty ingenious.
Do tell.
Syllabograms. Instead of representing a whole word, these symbols started to represent specific sounds.
Oh, like breaking a word down into syllables and then having symbols for those sounds.
Exactly. So you could combine the, say, arrow symbol with others to create the sounds you needed for life or for arrow, the weapon, and so on.
That is so clever. So instead of one symbol causing confusion, they built a whole system of sound combinations.
It's a testament to how inventive these early scribes were, always refining, always adapting.
That's amazing. They essentially created a whole new way of communicating.
A whole new way of writing for sure, and one that would go on to be used for over 2,000 years.
Wow. And it wasn't just limited to one language, right?
Right. The Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, they all took up cuneiform and adapted it to their own languages.
So it became a sort of universal language for the entire region.
You could say that. The way cuneiform spread and adapted, it's really one of the most fascinating things about it. I mean, think about it. Elamite, Hittite, Hurrian, even Old Persian, all using this system.
Mind-boggling. If it was so widespread, how did it, disappear? And how was it rediscovered?
We were about to uncover how cuneiform was rediscovered.
Right. It's a story that takes us all the way to the 17th century, when copies of inscriptions found at Persepolis started circulating among European scholars.
Persepolis, the grand capital of the Persian Empire.
Exactly. So these inscriptions, they were like messages from, a lost civilization.
Exactly. And these weren't just any inscriptions. They were trilingual.
Trilingual.
Yeah. The same text, but in 3 different languages. Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. And each language used its own form of cuneiform.
Wow. So it was like having 3 versions of the same coded message.
You could say that. It was like a linguistic Rosetta Stone.
Having the same text in multiple languages, that must have been a huge help in, cracking the code.
Oh, absolutely. Those trilingual inscriptions were key. They let scholars compare the different scripts, try to identify patterns and slowly piece together what the symbols meant.
Like a giant puzzle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of puzzles, there was this German scholar, Georg Friedrich Grotefend. He made a major breakthrough in the early 1800s.
I've heard of him. Didn't he figure out the word for king in Old Persian cuneiform?
He did. He recognized the title King of Kings in the Old Persian text, and from there, he was able to work out what some of the other signs meant.
That's incredible, like finding one piece of the puzzle that unlocks a whole section.
Precisely. Now, you might be wondering how the cuneiform script itself changed over those, 2,000 years.
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about that. It must have gone through some transformations, right?
Oh, for sure. The evolution of the signs is really interesting. A good example is the sign for head.
Okay, head. What did that look like?
In its earliest form, it was a fairly detailed image, almost like a profile view, of a head. But over time, scribes, well, they wanted to be more efficient, so the sign got simplified. Eventually, it lost most of those visual details and became just a bunch of wedges.
So from elaborate pictures to a more abstract system of wedges,
Exactly. It made writing faster, but also more difficult to learn, for sure.
I bet. So tell me about these wedges. How many were there? Hundreds?
Actually, no. Only 5 basic wedge shapes. Think of them as building blocks. And by combining these 5 wedges in different ways, scribes could create tons of different signs, hundreds of them, each one representing a syllable or a word.
So like a Lego system for ancient writing.
A good way to put it. With just a few basic pieces, they could express a whole world of ideas. But of course, becoming a scribe, that took serious dedication.
I can imagine. Years of training, right?
Oh, absolutely. You had to master all the ins and outs of cuneiform. Scribes, they held a really high status in Mesopotamian society. They weren't just copying stuff down, they were the keepers of knowledge. Historians, storytellers, legal experts, you name it.
Wow. So we're talking about more than just writing here. It was a whole culture, a way of life.
Precisely. And when you look at what they wrote about, well, it's just incredible. We're not just talking about laws and, royal decrees. There are tablets about everything. Medical practices, astronomy, even love poems and epic tales.
It's amazing to think they were writing about, their lives, their loves, their fears, just like we do today.
Exactly. It makes you realize how connected we are to these people from thousands of years ago. You can read about contracts, wills, marriage agreements, even school exercises.
Wow, it's like a window into their daily lives. It must be so exciting for scholars to uncover these personal stories.
Oh, it is. Every new translation, it adds something to our understanding of ancient Mesopotamia, like a giant jigsaw puzzle, each piece revealing something new, something unexpected.
I bet there are a lot of aha moments when a scholar finally deciphers, like, a really challenging passage.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
But translating cuneiform, well, it's not easy. You need a deep understanding of the languages, sure, but also the history, the culture, the religious beliefs, even the social customs.
Sounds like you need to be a bit of a Renaissance person to be a cuneiform scholar.
You could say that. It's a multidisciplinary field, that's for sure. It draws on linguistics, archaeology, history, anthropology.
Wow, a real mix of everything.
Mm.
But it must be so rewarding to be able to, unlock those secrets of the past.
It is. It's an incredible feeling. And with new technologies, well, the future of cuneiform research is very promising.
Speaking of technology, I've heard that artificial intelligence is being used to decipher cuneiform tablets. Is that right?
Absolutely. And that's a perfect topic for our final section.
So we've talked about those early clay tokens and how those symbols evolved and the amazing work those scholars did deciphering it all. But now it's the 21st century. And, technology's got to have a role in all this, right? What about artificial intelligence? Is it helping us understand cuneiform better?
Absolutely. AI is opening up a whole new world of possibilities. Think about it. An AI assistant that can, analyze tons of cuneiform text, identify patterns, even suggest translations.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's all thanks to things like machine learning and convolutional neural networks. These technologies, they're really changing how we approach cuneiform. We can tackle those millions of tablets that are still untranslated much faster and more accurately than we could before.
It's like having like a digital Sherlock Holmes, going through all those inscriptions, finding clues that would take us humans forever to spot.
That's a great analogy. And AI isn't just about, doing the translations for us. It can also help us make new connections, find these subtle patterns that we might miss. Like imagine an AI could analyze how often certain signs appear or how they're combined. Even the physical characteristics of the tablets themselves. And then bam, hidden meanings and relationships are revealed.
So it's not just about individual words. It's about, like, the big picture, right? The context, the nuances, the historical connections.
Exactly. It's like having a superpowered research assistant,
Yeah.
one that can go through mountains of data and be like, hey, look at this. This is important.
That's amazing. But what about the human scholars? What happens to them when AI is doing so much of the work?
It's a good question. The thing is, AI doesn't replace human expertise. It actually makes it better. Think of it this way. AI handles the boring, repetitive stuff. And that frees us humans up to focus on the really interesting things. Interpreting the texts, figuring out their historical significance, connecting them to other areas of knowledge.
So AI is a tool, a powerful one, sure, but a tool nonetheless.
Exactly. We're still the ones who have to wrestle with what these texts actually mean. The AI can give us clues, but it's up to us to make sense of them.
That makes sense. It's still the human mind that's at the heart of understanding these ancient mysteries.
And don't forget about things like intuition and imagination. Those are uniquely human qualities, and they're so important when you're trying to decipher something as complex as cuneiform.
Absolutely. And I think this has been, well, a perfect example of that. We started with clay tokens, and now we're talking about AI. It's been an incredible journey learning about this writing system and how it shaped, the course of civilization.
It's a reminder that even though these civilizations were around thousands of years ago, they were asking some of the same questions we ask today. Questions about life and death and love and justice.
And those questions, well, they're still relevant today.
Huh?
And thanks to Cuneiform, we have a glimpse into how they thought about those things back then.
Exactly. They left behind so much knowledge and wisdom, and the more we learn about their world, the better we understand our own place in history.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up. We've covered a lot of ground today, from those early scribes all the way to modern-day scholars and AI. But the journey doesn't have to end here. So to everyone listening, I encourage you, keep exploring. There's still so much to discover about cuneiform and about the world it reveals.